Exactly. So you're not going to blow them completely to the next county. But if you go in there and you're pressuring the property every day by making a disturbance like that, or a couple times a week, you're going to push them deer elsewhere, or they're going to not move, during daylight as much. But there's no sense of having a sanctuary and not ever knowing what's going on in there. I'm not saying hunt that sanctuary, but make sure the deer is positioned in there and to where where he's kind of at, and then you can hunt the edges of that sanctuary.
Right.
But
Right.
but the main thing is like some people go in and they blow up a farm, then they come back the next day and hang their stand. If you're going to hunt it, but you can't do
Yeah.
that. And at least what I found, you need to go in there and blow it up and hang the stand the same
Same
day,
day. Yeah.
and then go in there a day or two later, the next day, or a couple of days later, or even the next week, and then slip in there and hunt.
Yeah. That's good stuff.
And that's what I found out too. It works best for me. So, but because
Absolutely.
I've sat back and hunted farms and just thinking, I'm hunting the edges and I don't know what's going on back in the woods because I don't want to bump them. And then it never
That's
happens.
me.
And then I go,
I readily admit it. That's me.
and then everybody does that. That's just human nature. But then I go down in there and snoop around, after season's over, and it's like, oh my God, if I'd have just been sitting here for 2 days, I would have got him. That kind of deal.
Back by popular demand, one of my favorite blue collar and consistently lethal hunters, Heath Cisco. Heath teaches us how he spring scouts for bucks the right and wrong ways to intentionally blow out a buck while scouting his whereabouts in season, and so much more. Guys, Heath is the real deal, and he has so much to offer those of us who target specific bucks. One of my clients recently said, and I quote, "I need to learn how to be a better hunter." Guys, hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll be able to answer all of these questions and more. Take, for instance, question number 1. When your target buck hasn't been seen for a couple of weeks and you've decided to intentionally go in and blow him out, which one of the following would you mimic while executing this plan? Or there could be more than one: a squirrel hunter, a lost person, a rabbit hunter, or a stealthy ninja. How about this one? True or false? When intentionally blowing a buck out to find his whereabouts and uncover recent information on his habits, which of the following would you want to avoid? A, the buck hearing you when stomping around. B, the buck smelling you when stomping around. C, A and B. Or D, neither A nor B, because bumping bucks during the hunting season will result in the pressured buck leaving your property. Heath and I discuss how our management approaches to nutrient-dense, toxin-free, biologically robust forages using regenerative food plotting practices could elevate his already successful approach to targeting and killing specific bucks. Enjoy. Let's go, Heath. Let's go ahead and jump into. I know in the fall things got busy. I love talking. I don't know about you. Well, I do know whitetail hunting. It's May now, soon to be June. And I'm curious about a number of things. A guy like you who consistently kills target bucks. Are you just bass fishing in May and June, or turkey hunting, or are you still thinking about whitetails, and is there, what's in your plan right now? So I want to talk about all that, but I want to, well, let's start there, and then we'll get into that your second buck that you killed in Illinois. So what are you doing right now? Are you just trail cams are in the house, in the garage? You're not really thinking about whitetails, or
well, it's a great question. So my trail cameras are all up right now, in the garage. They're not out in the field. In the spring, it's busy with family. My girls run track, so I'm traveling around doing that. And then I used to fish all the time. I got a bass boat and hadn't been out of the garage in 5 years. So, whitetails are 365 days a year. I mean, if I'm off work, I'm either doing something with family or doing something for whitetails. And or the outdoors. I'm a beekeeper too, so I keep bees. So there's a lot of stuff to do with that in the spring. But then, I'm either planning, I'm trying to find new properties to get permission on or access to. And then like this spring, I rented a traco. I tore out a bunch of trees because I found my fields. So once they got grown up to a certain point, the deer were vacating them. So I want to get it back and get more, browse and stuff for them. So I've been tearing out trees and making fields again to where I can, bush hog them and every year, every two. But there's always stuff to do with whitetail. I'm looking at my equipment, modifying my equipment. This year I'm getting a new bow. I haven't got the bow yet, but then, I've been shooting a little bit with my old bow and putting out some minerals, not a lot of minerals. And, in Ohio, it's a bait state, so you're allowed to put out minerals. So I'm thinking about the deer. I'm trying to stay out of the fields as much as possible because of the fawns, coming in. It's hard to bush hog this type of year, cutting back on some of the food plots and stuff because of the fawns being bedded out there and stuff. So it never ends.
Good deal. That's good stuff. That's kind of what I figured. I didn't think you'd turn to bass fishing 100%. Maybe when your girls are done with track, you'll get that bass boat back out.
I hope so at some point. It's just I love the bass fish, but I'm like out there in the water and I'm just thinking about velvet bucks. So it's kind of crazy. And it's expensive to do. I like doing things, full bore when I do it. So if I'm doing fishing, I'm buying all this stuff and spending all this gas money. I'm going all here and doing all that when I could be putting that money into, my small farms or a new access, stuff like that.
That's right. That's right. Anything worth doing is worth overdoing. I love it.
Yes.
So that's good. That's good. So obviously I wrote some notes down about equipment. Wouldn't mind talking about your bow setup. Your new, soon to be new bow setup. But if you don't mind, let's backtrack. I know we tried to connect last fall, late fall, after you went out to Illinois and killed that buck. Can you? And I'm sure you've told this story a million times, but one of the things I've always liked about you as I follow you is that you are 110% in on picking a specific or a couple, however many you have that year, specific target buck in a set age. I don't know how you set it in your mind, whether it's age and antler size, and then you go after them full bore. So can you kind of, in a nutshell, give us the story of that Illinois buck?
Sure. So in Illinois, I got access to 2 different farms, and there's several of us that hunt it, and they're very good hunters. So the deer, it's not a game farm. I mean, we hunt it hard. We don't sit back and just wait on them to come to plots. I mean, we get in there, jump them out of beds, set up on the beds, do bed hunting. It's hunted from October 1 until the end of the season, except during gun season. We stay out of it in gun season, hoping that the neighbors push deer on it and we kind of, get some age on them. But when I go, I target 4.5-year-old bucks or older. It depends on rack size. I mean, I'm one of them antler geeks that I want the biggest buck I can come on to. And then in late season, I like just going after a mature buck, and I don't care about the antler size, just an older class deer. But this year in Illinois, I had there was a buck that I seen 2 or 3 times the year before. The sheds were found by one of my buddies on the farm, and I was targeting him. We got a couple pictures of him in velvet, and he was an exceptional deer. I mean, just a ginormous buck. And there's 200-inch deer in that area. Not every year, but there's been numerous ones produced in that area. And this one was 200 inches. There was no doubt, hands down. And he was showing up a lot early season.
Hey guys, Jason here. I wanted to briefly interrupt this amazing podcast to talk about Fall Reload. Fall Reload was an idea hatched up by myself years before anything even remotely close was available, and after asking a lot of questions over the course of a couple of years. For example, as food plotters, why aren't we addressing soil health and plant nutrient density, meaning the soil microbiome? As you know from several podcast episodes, it's all about the biology. If we restore the biology in the soil and diversify above and below ground plantscapes, we don't need all of the expensive and toxic synthetic inputs. Yes, it's really that easy. Fall Reload is an intensively thought out and well-planned multi-species cocktail blend that acts as a biological primer, so you don't need those bug-in-a-jug products. My good friend Dr. Rick Haney and I have tested those products, and honestly, nothing is better than good old plant roots. It's really quite that simple. Plant roots feed the biology through root exudates in a complex system that we covered in a podcast with Dr. James White. And in exchange, the biology offers the needed nutrients to the plant, all made possible because the sun shines. It's an ancient and efficient system that we simply got in the way of when farmers were sold synthetic fertilizers after World War II. The game is played in and around the roots. These complex interactions between roots and microbes even eliminates the need to lime your fields to correct the soil pH. In fact, I haven't limed my fields since I began farming in nature's image nearly a decade ago, and my soil pH is maintained between 7 and 7.3. I spent the winter months of 2023-24 talking to customers from all over the country who offered immediate and detailed feedback on how Fall Reload performed for them. And although I enjoy tweaking every single blend when necessary, and sometimes even when not necessary, customers overwhelmingly asked me not to change a thing. While the 2024 version of Fall Reload will be very, very similar to last year's version, I did blend some trial mixes to test just in case. I'll be doing these tests on my own and with some clients. And honestly, that's just what I enjoy doing. We're excited to say that this version of Fall Reload is the best we've had to date. That's not our opinion. That's coming from our customers. Now, I do want to say that as I record this on June 25th, our growers are harvesting this year's seed for some of the species in Fall Reload. And being a fan of the freshest seed possible, we will be changing over very, very soon. Besides being fresh seed, our regenerative growers get better every year as they continue to remove unnecessary toxins, inputs, and to regenerate their soil health. I'm able to maintain transparency into their production systems for you, and the result of that is the very best seed on the market. You know, the amazing fact is those seeds that we ship to you include the biology that our growers have worked so hard to establish. This is not a bug in a jug. It's nature's system in a seed. We always want the latest and greatest in your hands. The logistics of getting a product like triticale harvested, cleaned, and hauled to our production and bagging lines takes some time. But we plan to have all that complete by mid-July so that those of you who like to plant your fall plots early can get your seed. We firmly believe that slight hiccups in the supply chain are a great trade-off for superior fresh seed.
And I wasn't able to get out there because, like I said, my girls run track, and then they also run cross country in the fall. So it's really busy for both of them. One of them's in college and one of them's in high school. So we're going one day on Friday and the next day on Saturday. So I'd have loved to have been out there, but I had a couple good friends that are very good hunters, and they were hunting him, and they seen him a couple different times, and they were putting some pressure on me. We hunt aggressively on this farm. And you know, that's why we got it. And it's just our style of hunting on that particular place. And by the time I got out there, it was about November the 4th. And when I got out there, the buck had been missing for like a week to 2 weeks. And there was one trail camera video around the 28th of October. And that's the last trail camera video, picture, or anything that anybody on the farm ever got. So I went out there hunting, not knowing that deer was missing, knowing that we hadn't got pictures of them, but you know, they're just in there somewhere. So I hunted him I had 2 weeks to hunt, and I hunted him hard for about, 7 to 8 days with no sightings. I couldn't decipher his tracks from last year. That's one of my main things of, getting on a set of tracks and being able to, be able to know when I see a set of tracks what deer that is. if it's a very large deer or whatever. And just wasn't seeing his tracks, wasn't seeing his sign. There was several other good bucks in that area. My buddy ended up, Justin, coming out, and he shot one of the other bucks that I wasn't even hunting on that side of the farm. Justin took up it, and I hunted on the other end of the farm because I was wanting this ginormous buck. So, but it just wasn't working out. There was another a really good buck in the mid 160s that I'd seen, and I wasn't going after him either because I was wanting this. I thought, I just killed a 170 in late October in Ohio, so why do I want to settle for something that isn't really special if he's there?
Yeah.
So I continued just bouncing around. It was the rut, so I was setting in different areas for travel corridors, and I just never seen a buck. So I kept hunting, and then I did see a buck. The big bucks were either disappearing on the neighbors or whatever, just not moving. And towards the end of my hunt, around the middle of my hunt, I seen this buck that ended up killing come out the edge of this brush field and then go back down in following or chasing doe. And I thought, you know what, if that other one doesn't show up, I'll target him. And I gave it I had, like I said, 2 weeks. I was on about day 12, and I thought, I either go after this other buck or try to come back in late season for this big giant one. So I thought, you know what, I want to go after the other buck because I passed that other buck up the year before, and he put on, a good bit of inches, wasn't a bunch, and he wasn't a giant. I mean, he was a good buck, but he wasn't a giant. He was probably 4.5 years old. So I got back in that area where he was at, set up one evening, and seen a couple small bucks come through or whatever. And I just knew I needed to be in that spot the next day. And, I went in there the next day. There was a doe in heat, and there was probably 15 bucks chasing this one doe. And he was one of them. And there was another one that we call Baby Giant, which was this buck was probably a 2-year-old, just an exceptional deer for 2 years old, probably pushing 170 inches but he had a bunch of stuff broke off, and he was off our hit list because we was hoping that he would survive till this year. So what the plans are. But anyways, I got set up in this, basically it's a creek crossing, and there's a brush field on one side of me where a lot of the doe bed and some bucks bed. And then there's some woods on the other side. So I set up in between, and they was on this doe, running this doe around everywhere. And it was up this ridge probably 80 yards from me. And all morning, back and forth, running this doe. And it was warm. This year, November was, again, terrible because the weather was warm. Seemed like it got cooler in October, early October or mid-October than it did, the first 2 weeks of November. And so it was it was getting up to like 65, 70 degrees. So it was warm for deer, especially with the bucks with winter coats, and then running those doe everywhere. And I contemplated on moving up the ridge, but I decided to stay where I'm at because I knew I was in a good spot and there's a possibility they come through there. But, following that doe, they're going to go wherever that doe goes. So about 9 o'clock, I look up the ridge, and here comes a single deer down the ridge. And I thought, that has to be a buck. So I threw up my binos, and it's the buck that I was targeting. So he was working his way down the ridge, and I thought, he's going to work right to me. Well, he worked right to me. What I didn't really realize at the time, but those things have been running that doe everywhere, and it was warm, and they were wore out. And he was coming down that ridge to drop down right in front of me to get a drink of water out of the creek. And when he dropped down into the creek, I shot him at 28 yards, and he ran up the hill about 50 yards and died over, killed over. So it was a great hunt. It worked out. I was going to move, but I didn't. And then what's funny is while I was taking down my stand, I was packing up my stand at the bottom of the tree, I heard a deer snort right beside of me. And I turned around and looked, and that other big buck that we call Baby Giant, it's, a young buck, he was standing in the exact same spot getting a drink of water. So it just showed me how important when it's hot like that water is to these deer, especially when they're out running and just traveling, cutting across country and stuff like that. They got to have that water.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good story, and I've got a pile of notes for more detailed questioning. But I guess sticking with your water comment, we install water guzzlers just fair. I mean, some guys put in ponds, obviously, or water holes. I've got a fiberglass water guzzler that I put on properties, and sometimes there's plenty of water on the property. It's just a matter of putting it where we want it, not where the water is. But you're right. When those bucks are running in the rut, dry weather conditions, ambient air, and they're just dehydrated, right? And it could be cold, but it's cold, dry weather, and they're looking for a water source. I remember a specific 5.5-year-old that we were hunting. We killed him at 6.5 here in Pennsylvania. He was hitting our water guzzlers at like 11 to 12:30, right in the middle of the day during the rut and all through December. And we never killed him that year at 5.5. And I didn't have the time like you. My kids were younger than what yours are now at the time. But I didn't hunt him that hard. Honestly, I kind of wanted him to live. I was addicted to this buck. And he made it that year, but that was one thing that year with trail cams everywhere. I was like, good Lord, the amount of times he's visiting water sources in the middle of the day, and you could see him, like you said, panting, and just he had been chasing and he was hitting these water sources. And that I've had clients and prospects say, well, if you go over there the other side, go up that ridge and down over, there's a pond. If you go that way, there's a stream that runs 99% of the year. And I'm like, yeah, but I want to make them, I want to keep them away from that perimeter, make them fat and lazy, and put them right here where my food is and kill them right here. So that's a good point.
Yep. You're 100% correct on that, because I used to think the same. Well, I got a creek here. Well, I got this. Well, why make them go down through over there and go to that point when they can think in their head? I mean, I'm trying to think like a deer. I go up here to this lush clover plot or whatever. I got this brush field. It's got all this browse in it. And man, there's a little water hole right there where I can just get what I need and don't have to go the other way down over the hill. And then by the time I work back around to the food plot, it's after hours.
That's right. So, yeah, my son and I, Grant, just installed a guzzler, another water guzzler, fiberglass. I don't know. It's probably only, I bet it's only 400 yards, maybe even 300 yards from another one. And most people would look at that and think, what in the hell? What are you doing? Why do you need another one right there? But it's on this ridge line that they move, and it's the one we just installed is just outside of a refuge that we have set up for them that we do not hunt. And so now we have a stand between this water source and that refuge. I'm sorry, a guzzler, and obviously plenty of trees between that refuge or sanctuary and that water guzzler. So I think between catching the does slipping over there and the bucks, between the bed obviously and the guzzler, I think it's going to be a hugely successful opportunity. We have another one sitting out behind the barn ready to go at the north end of the property under the same situation. So they can run that whole ridge and hit water guzzlers. And
that's great, because a certain buck may just prefer one and not the other. But if you only have the other, he may not ever go to it.
Yeah.
I get it. It makes sense.
Well, that's pretty neat. So I'm just curious too, that baby giant, you got my attention with baby giant.
Yeah.
If you think he's a legit 2.5 and not a 3.5, if next year he's pushing, I don't know what, depending on what he produces, you said your target buck's 4.5. If you guys still feel strongly he's only 3.5 this coming fall, does he get the pass?
Well, so that's something that we'll have to discuss because there's like 6 of us that hunt these different properties, and they're all they've all killed great deer. So and it's highly pressured around the outskirts of it because this place is known for killing, having big bucks on. So we'll have to see. Hopefully, he could be 3.5. We don't know. We did find a shed off of him. I really think he was 2.5 myself. I got video of him 2 different times, but we'll have to see, because I know that one of the guys that hunt it, I mean, he's after antler size, and he's the main guy in the lease. So if he decides he's going to go after it, I mean, it was off limits this year. So we'll just have to see. In a perfect scenario, we wouldn't touch him. We wouldn't we would let him at least get to 4.5 years old, and preferably 5. But it just doesn't happen in this area because the people were stacked along the borders.
Yeah.
And all the people stacked along the borders except one are out of staters. So, and they get a select time to hunt, and they're going to try to kill the biggest buck they can, and they're probably from states. Well, I know they are from states that they don't have a lot of opportunity, so you can't really blame them.
Yeah. One of my wildlife professors walked in the first year and wrote "Tragedy of the Commons" on the board, up on the board, probably with chalk back then. And it hit. As a Pennsylvania hunter going to Mississippi State, it hit home for me. And she's like, "Have you guys ever heard anybody say, if I don't kill this buck, somebody else will?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's like the whole, talking point in Pennsylvania right now." And I feel we feel like a buck is far more elusive at getting away from those knuckleheads, especially the knuckleheads coming from the east to Illinois to kill them. That at some point, and I'm not saying that that's the wrong decision, but that's the fun part, I think, about hunting like we hunt, is at some point you've got to make that decision. It's not a super efficient style of hunting, but if you pass that buck for another year or two and he survives, that's the kind of animal you want to put at 4.5 or 5.5, because he's going to break that 200-inch mark.
Absolutely. And like on my two places here in Ohio that I control or own, I try to, I let deer get older. I don't shoot them young. Now, my daughter ended up killing one of my up and comers last year that was young, but it was her second buck, and I couldn't hold her off of it. It came in, it was perfect, and she shot it, and it was a 153-inch, a 3-year-old. And, much as I hated doing that, it was the camaraderie, the situation, the whole works. I let her shoot it. I wasn't going to hold her off because I didn't want her not get one and then, not be as happy about hunting or this and that, whatever.
No, that was Ohio?
Yes, it was in Ohio.
Yeah.
But I try to, on my places, I let them get the older age. I mean, I want them to get to 5.5. And it's hard when, your neighbors are dumping out corn and setting over them in a pop-up blind with, whatever weapon they prefer. So it's tough, but I've lost I've had numerous bucks I could have hunted that they've disappeared or the neighbors killed because they weren't to the age that I wanted. But that's part of if that's your management plan, that's what you do.
Yeah. There's almost a sick fascination with that. Like my wife has always said, I hate hunting season. And it's because, we're so like, damn it, that, XYZ buck is on the neighbor and we're seeing him there daylight constantly. But as much as we complain about it, it's almost the sick fascination of having him exposed to other hunters who probably can't kill him, to be honest, unless they just dumb luck. I had a double main beam buck one year. He was only 3.5, and he was running with a bachelor group. Very good group of bucks, especially for Pennsylvania. I decided to kill none of them. Ended up passing 2 of them in bow season. And this double main beam buck was a very good buck, but I wanted to see him the next year. And some clown on the next door neighbor walked in the first morning of gun season and shot him on the way to the stand. Didn't even get to the stand.
That's crazy.
And I wanted to puke, but I never questioned my decision to pass that buck. Never.
You can't. You can't. You got to get it in your head. This is what you're going to do, and it kind of makes you sick when something like that happens. So, like I said, I mentioned before that I'm all about the antler size, and I want age on them too. But I'm all about the antler size, especially when they get after 4.5. But what I do that's my strategy through October and November. When it gets to be mid-December, and I haven't been able to get on one of the target bucks, I switch gears and I go to the oldest. I don't care if it's 100 inches. I don't care if it's 115, 140. I don't care. And I've got pictures of 2 170s, let's say, for instance, or 2 160s. I'm going after that old, gnarly buck because I enjoy late season. I say late season, late December, January hunting, especially in the snow and stuff like that, of targeting these old warriors, because I know if I kill that buck, I'm going to better my property, for one, because I'm moving that bad genetic, let's say, or just old downhill buck off of the property for a new one. And I love doing that. And people are like, well, you had pictures of all these bucks and you killed a you had pictures of 150s and 160s and you killed a 130. I was like, no. I was like, I know. I said, it worked out perfect. They're like, what do you mean? I was like, I targeted one of these old, let's say, bully bucks or just old bucks that's never going to amount to anything. Just get them out of the gene pool. It's important to do that because a farm's only going to hold so many deer unless just a normal farm without touching it, in my opinion, is only going to hold X amount of bucks. If you go in there and you plant different food plots, diversity, as you talked about, do timber stand improvements, even the burns, like you said, have CRP fields, have all this stuff, you can increase that, the holding capacity. But if you get one or two bullies on that thing, you're going to lower your deer capacity, and they're going to push all the other ones off the property. And what I've found, the larger antlered deer are less aggressive. They don't participate as much in the rut. They don't burn as much energy as these other bully bucks that go around and run the farm. Our farm in Illinois this year, every buck on it had something broke on it. And there was deer with half racks missing. And I really think that older deer that I was hunting, in November, I think he was pushed off of the farm because of the bully bucks. And the bully bucks, there was numerous ones. They was anywhere from 110 inches to 130 inches. They were pushing all these other bucks off the property, and they were kicking their butt, even though they had 20 to 30 inches of less antler. They needed to be taken out. So one of our good friends that hunts the property, he killed one of the bully bucks. And, looking back at it, my buck that I killed, he wasn't that aggressive, and he was in the 150s. He wasn't no giant buck. He was a good, respectable buck. But management-wise, I should have held out and then went back into December and January and got on one of them 120 to 130s and killed the bully bucks, to better the farm.
Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack too. I totally agree with killing the oldest buck. For me, I could care less what he has on his head if he's 6.5, 7.5 years old. Those bucks impress me completely. But I remember when I went to Mississippi State in 1997, I went to Dr. Damaris and introduced myself. He was the deer guy there. And I was like, man, I just want a job working with the deer. That's all I want. And of course, all the kids whose parents didn't make any money got these work-study jobs, and they were like, well, your parents make too much money, which my parents were middle class. My mom was a school teacher. My dad was in trucking. They didn't make a lot of money. Sure. But unfortunately, that's how the academic world works. Yes. So I was like, listen, I'll just give you my free time. I'll just volunteer. I said, okay, here's what you're going to do. Can you climb a tree? I said, hell yeah. Gave me a tree stand. I had to go out and watch 3 bucks in a pen, obviously, at the research facility, which they now call the MSU Deer Lab. And I climbed up the tree, and I had to do observational research. Which bucks are fighting which bucks are doing the breeding, who seems to have the attitude. And the first thing I noticed, I think it was a yearling, a 3-year-old, and a 4-year-old, to my knowledge. And the 3-year-old was just a typical 8-point, nothing crazy. The 4-year-old was a big 10. And that 3-year-old was his attitude was absolutely incredible. He just pushed everybody around, including us. And he did most of the breeding. So it just goes to show that attitude can be at any age, I think, once they hit that 2.5 plus, age bracket. But I've heard a lot of guys, especially in Iowa and the Midwest, talk about these bully bucks, and it kind of reminds me of longbeards, right? When you're hunting a mature longbeard, like a 4 or 5-year-old longbeard, and you kill them, all of a sudden all the 2-year-olds in the neighborhood are like, yeah, buddy, let's go. And they're running around trying to breed hens, right? Or they're jumping on top of that flopping, 4-year-old that you just killed, trying to, claim territory. So you definitely have these hierarchical things going on. But I found that interesting. And I also think that those old bucks can still breed the right doe if you study what's going on with the deer farmers. Even though their physical attributes are not impressive, I think they can breed the right doe and have a high breeding value and produce 200-inch future 200-inch whitetails. But
yeah,
that's all good stuff.
I've 2 different ways. I was back in the early 2000s. I got to be friends with Don Kiske, and of course you probably know of him. Yeah. So at the time, he owned 3,300 acres in Iowa, and he had control of that. And I hadn't been around big bucks. I was hunting them, but I haven't, hunting them and seeing them and being able to observe them a lot is two different things.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I talking to him and stuff, and we were out there shed hunting his farm, and he was talking about, yeah, he said I had this booner was in this area and he moved across the road, and then this booner was over here and he moved out and he's living in his people's cow pasture out in these little drainages. And I'm like, why are they out there when you have all this awesome territory and cover and food and all this stuff? And he's like, I got too many bully bucks. He's like, I got a buck that'll take over 40 acres and not let any other mature buck in there.
Yeah.
And I was like, gee, many Christmas. He said, yeah. He said, we got to get that buck killed. And this was back in the early 2000s. And he was planting, it was right around 2000. He was planting food plots and doing all that stuff way ahead of a lot of people in the Midwest, especially. And I've kind of seen that over time as well. You know, you have a farm and you know, it's ran by, you see the same buck all the time when you go in there. Well, you take that buck out and two other ones show up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's very important.
Yeah,
and then also going off of antler size, you know, I'm sure it's the same way out in the wild. You know, there was this has been 20 years ago. There was a guy that had a buck. You know, that's when they first started, you know, collecting semen and doing all this stuff from, you know, fenced in deer. This guy had a buck that was probably 160 to 70 inches, just a big, massive 9-pointer, but he threw all kinds of 200 class bucks.
Yep, exactly.
And it's just weird. It's just like, how is that thing throwing that?
Yeah, they have a breeding value that is completely somewhat separate from their phenotypical appearance.
Yeah, and I don't know that much about it at all, but I remember looking at this buck sheds and they was talking about, you know, the value of his semen. And I'm like, how's that? Why would I get that when I got a 300-inch deer over here? Why isn't his semen higher? But that 300-inch may never have thrown a 200-inch. I mean, it's
kind of like,
weird.
You ever see like the parents of a supermodel? They're super ugly people, and they throw this incredibly good-looking human being.
There you go.
It's the same thing. Everybody has a different breeding value. But I totally agree with the bully buck deal. I think it's fun talking to guys in Iowa and out, you know, in the Midwest where they have the buck age structure. A lot of those listening, you know, in the Northeast, Southeast, they can't relate to this because our land ownership patterns generally are smaller and our hunting culture is horrible. They're killing a lot of, you know, the bulk of the bucks dying are 1.5 years, maybe 2.5. So they don't have the age structure, but I've noticed even on when we had the original 95-acre piece here and we stockpile. I know some outdoor writers say you can't stockpile bucks, but that's completely wrong. But we've started stockpiling. And now it might not look like what you're talking about, but we started letting yearlings and 2-year-olds go and having more 3-year-olds. And we were always finding bucks. Like this year, we had, I don't know how many bucks that broke an entire side, like 3-4 inches up the main beam, just broke off.
Yes.
The buck my son killed, his first archery buck, he killed, was a beautiful buck. And by the time he had a split brow and I think he broke that and he broke his left G4. So he got broke up in 2 places by the time he killed him. And, you know, this works whether you're in Iowa, Illinois, Pennsylvania.
Absolutely.
It's just obviously at kind of varying levels.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, it's hard to take a 40-acre piece of property and be able to see all this happening, but it's happening. It's just, you probably don't see these deer enough to realize all this stuff's happening.
Yeah. So you've got to trust. You definitely have to trust in the process. And that's something I wish with state agencies, I think state agencies almost have this goal, and it depends which one, not all of them. They seem like Pennsylvania, New York, you know, this way. Some of the southeastern state agencies have this new goal of just annihilating the deer. Like we're just like Pennsylvania is going backwards to let's just kill more, and it's disgusting. I'd like to see. I love it when I see some of these younger guys, and I don't watch them really. My son does on YouTube, who are super patient. They trust in the buck. And they're passing them like your buck, Baby Giant, I think you called him.
Yes.
They're just saying, you know what? I realize that a car may hit him, a poacher may shoot him, or a hunter may legally kill him, but I'm going to let him go, and I'm just going to trust in this process.
Yes.
And I love seeing more young guys do that, especially the bow hunters.
Yes, and that would be great if a lot of people do it. And like I said, I hunt. I'm the out of state guy in Illinois, so and then there's other guys like in Ohio where I live, and they come up and hunt neighboring properties. They're the out of state guys, so it's hard to go out of state, spend all that money, hotel room, maybe a lease, equipment, time away from family, and have a good, respectable buck come through and pass.
Mm-hmm.
But if we all kind of, everybody doesn't have the same goal. And, like I said, if my daughter would have passed that buck, maybe she wouldn't have been as interested the next year or whatever to go hunting. So you want to keep hunters involved in it, but you don't want it to be just a slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
So, but it's all what people want. My neighbor here, he just wants to kill a couple deer for, to eat every year. So do I look down on him because of me? I'm trying to grow the biggest one, and I'm like, hey, don't shoot this one, but shoot this one and this one. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm just going to shoot the first one that comes in. So it's hard to do that. But if you make your property the best you can, and do everything you can to keep the deer on it, and just bet on the deer that they're going to survive, and let it play out as it is.
Let's shift gears a little bit. I know you and I sort of offline have had this conversation about, all right, I'll just start here. Many of those listening to this podcast and my clients, and I would throw myself in there, have been accused of enjoying the process, or admitted to enjoying the process. And there's nothing wrong with this. This is probably me, of actually managing a property and making it as habitat intense as we can for deer, turkeys, whatever, quail, to the point sometimes that we don't even hunt as hard as we used to, and maybe not at all, to be honest with you, just because we enjoy producing mature bucks and seeing what we can do. So I'm just curious, and I know, obviously the property ownership and the smaller size of the tracts you hunt, and you're just gaining permissions on some, but how much management do you do to actually build the hunt and sort of manipulate or control, for lack of better terms, a specific buck and how he patterns and how much he uses, your area? And I guess, I'm specifically talking about food plots, prescribed fire, like you mentioned, and water sources.
Yes.
I know, I also know you're a fan of the late season, and or at least it's been said, and you just said it earlier, as a wildlife biologist and a property manager, I know, and owner of a small parcel, I know that the Achilles heel of a mature buck is late season food. And it wasn't until I bought my place and actually started passing up what most would kill in this area, middle-aged bucks to the occasional mature buck, that I realized, holy cow, these rut-stressed and winter-stressed bucks that make it through, they're feeling that, whereas they felt all fall, they felt that need to breed, they're now feeling that need to survive. And survival kicks in, and I don't want to say they're saying this, but they're thinking, okay, it's time I make sure I live to go on to another year and produce more fawns, which is the ultimate definition of fitness in nature, is producing young. So how much of it do you do, and can we just kind of talk about that for a little bit?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons I don't fish like I used to, because I'm always trying to make improvements, trying to plant, different types of trees, maintaining the trees. There's a lot of work in just maintaining a tree, or a bunch of trees, maintaining fields, doing, TSI in the woods. I'm to the point now where certain areas I'm even trying to build bedding areas, just to make it more, laying logs down and stuff in there, because they like having their backs up against different places, putting them on strategic places and trying to position the deer. And there's no better satisfaction to go into, let's say, a bedding point, and where I got the deer, only one or two maybe bedded in there, maybe none. And then, hinge cut a couple trees, lay a couple logs down, clean out the leaves, and then come back the following fall, and there's hair in them spots where they're bedded. That's satisfaction. Even if it isn't a giant deer, you're manipulating these deer, or or cultivating a food plot to where it keeps the wind in your advantage, and they think they have it at their advantage, and you're right off to the side of it, and going out and hunting the property, in the beginning before you ever start all this work, and maybe seeing one, maybe no deer, to where you're going out and seeing 5 to 6 to 8 to 10, and one of them is a good quality buck when you go out on the hunt. There's a lot of satisfaction in that. And then planting an apple tree, and in 5-6 years that apple tree start producing, and seeing wildlife come into it, deer travel across fields, and a lot of acreage just to come in and eat apples off your tree. The same way with planting like a chestnut oak tree, or a different, I planted some sawtooth oaks as well, and they're producing now. There's a lot of satisfaction in that. And I wish I had more property to do that with. And a lot of the properties I hunt, I don't have that opportunity. But this past year in Ohio, that big buck I killed, I manipulated my farm to where when he showed up on that farm, I was going to have an opportunity at him. And I didn't do it he thought that he had the advantage, but I was strategic enough to set it up for me. And what's sad, when I killed the buck, then it was over. It's just like, man, I wish I could put air back in him again and just be able to chase him another day. But hopefully another buck at some point will come up in that caliber, and I'll be able to hunt him in the same spot. And he'll probably end up doing he'll have the same kind of habits, because that's just big deer do big deer things. And, if you figure that out, you manipulate your property for those big deer instead of just deer. And usually when one disappears a couple years later, another one will be there, and you can kind of strategize towards him the same way.
Yeah, I like it. I don't see much in that group of guys that I would throw you into, who are really good, hardworking guys. They have jobs and families, and they're perennial killers. They're consistently killing top end bucks. I don't hear many of them talking about management from a forest stand improvement. Obviously prescribed fire and food plots. There's the occasional, mention of a food plot, but you had mentioned earlier that Ohio is a bait state.
Yes.
And, you're sitting on 40 acres and the guy next to you is dumping corn on the border or whatever. I get that. That's frustrating. I firmly believe that the whitetail's gut is not evolutionarily, it does not want grain. It does not want soybeans. And my clients have been killing, big bucks, mature bucks, top end bucks, whatever, little bucks for 25 years. Whatever they want to kill, they've been killing them. So I've always been forced to figure out something different, something unique, constantly evolving and innovating to create an island on that property to make it different. And that's why when soil health became something that I picked up, it blew my mind, because I love it, because very few are ever going to adapt it. And I think that's unfortunate for the health of our properties and our ecosystem, and obviously the health of humans and wildlife. But as a consultant, when I can get my clients to open their mind, change their mindset, and focus on nutrient density, and explain to them how the herbivore gut really works, it's almost like cheating. People think baiting with corn is cheating. I laugh when I hear that guys are putting corn out. I would much rather have a nutrient-dense food plot with plant species that are complementary to one another, that offer medicinal. Corn is junk. There are herbs that offer medicinal benefits tremendously, whether it's worms, and whitetails have nutritional wisdom. Those who listen to my podcast know this. My good friend Fred Provenza has done the bulk of the research, and we've had him on the podcast. They're lifelong herbivores. They're professional herbivores. So they've got to know what plants they need to be optimized or maximized. Now, do they go to corn? Absolutely. I can't argue with that. But if I go down to the McDonald's here in town, they not only have one line of people all the way out to the state route, they have two lines now, because Americans have destroyed their gut bacteria, and we think that a number 2 or whatever the hell they have now is delicious, right? Does
Yes.
that mean that it's the best thing for our biological system? Absolutely not. And if you don't believe me, look at our healthcare, our sick care system right now. People are sicker and fatter and more stressed than they've ever been, period. And now we're using drugs like Ozempic to stab them in the gut and fix things, right? And obviously we have
Yes.
side effects. And I get into this stuff. I love the health aspect of it. But I
Yes.
guess tying that back in, I personally believe, and I won't name the guys, I think you probably know all of them, who I think they're awesome. I think what they're doing is super cool. I love the management side of it, and I love watching my kids target bucks now and go after them. But I sit here and I'm like, man, just give me 1 acre, and I guarantee you, I will have these guys killing other people's bucks. We call them OPBs, and we have for years. I
Yes.
haven't heard anybody steal that yet. I'm sure somebody has. I took that from the investment world where they call other people's money. You want to always spend other
Yes.
people's money, not your own. And we enjoy killing a buck, especially late season. You mentioned not hunting during the rifle season. When my kids were younger, that's what they used.
Yes.
And I would try to get them to pass. We would always say the first week you're seeing really good bucks for Pennsylvania in rifle season on our farm. The second week you're shopping. You're sitting there and we have had heated debates about why we should kill this buck and not kill this buck while the buck's standing out there at 100 yards. And we have great stories.
That's a bad time to do it.
It is a bad time to do it. 2 years ago, my daughter passed one that we still can't believe we passed, but it was a decision made, and
Yes.
it was fun. So I guess I'm just, I get the whole corn thing. I think in the future, the way the state agencies are bureaucrats, right? They're political.
Yes.
I know, and I can say this. I have a lot of peers, very smart biologists in just about every state agency in the country at this point, friends. And when we are sitting having a beer, they say, Jason, I can't say this stuff, but you can. Chronic wasting disease is like COVID-19. It's like war. It's a joke. It's an
I'm with
opportunity.
you 100%. I don't know enough about it, but I agree.
It's an opportunity for them to make money and push their agendas and ultimately have a kickback scheme at the end of the day. And we're seeing more and more, like Pennsylvania. It's encroaching. Their CWD zone is encroaching on my county. And it's painful to me because I know what a joke it is. The whole thing's a complete joke. Killing more deer is doing nothing but taking us in the opposite direction
Yes.
when it comes to solving the problem. So, I mean, the silver lining here is the days of these guys dumping, 20, 30, 50 pounds of corn on your border to kill a buck might be coming to an end. But I have a hard time believing they'll ever attack the food plots and the agricultural aspect of attracting deer to a nutrient-dense soil, healthy soil type medicinal plot. I know it's crazy, but when your next paycheck is a function of how different you are. I mean, we've had corn and beans for, a long time.
Yes.
And I get that deer go to them. So anyway, I'm surprised that it doesn't take a lot. Sometimes a pharmacy is all you need and an acre is enough.
Sure. Well, you made some great points that I haven't looked at that way. Because I don't know enough about it. And talking to you, I'm learning as we go. I plant food plots now. Do I test soil and do this, that, or whatever? Not really. I don't. I mean, I just flat admit it. And do I put out some corn to attract deer to my property? Yes, I have to because the neighbor's doing it. At least that's my mindset. But my problem is in Ohio with this baiting is corn is too easy because you go buy a 50 pound bag for $10 and you go out and dump it and you put a cell camera up over it and you pop up a pop-up blind and you wait till one shows up. But then if one doesn't show up, or you kill your buck, you've got, let's say, 15 deer, in a wooded area where there's not a lot of browse, and they're relying on that corn a lot. They're coming to it every day. And then one of the guys shoots a buck off of it, and then he just completely quits and walks away. And these deer were relying a lot on that,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not thinking of the deer nutrition, bettering the deer herd. It's like greed. You go out and kill your buck, and then you quit. When I feed corn, I feed it almost year round. I got it in these feeders because I don't cut them off from it. I put the corn out. It's kind of an attractant. I use use bigger feeders to where you don't have to go in there as much, and it's got a spinner on it, so it's a timer, so it doesn't put out very much.
Right.
It's just kind of a little bit of attractant, and I'm hoping the rest of my land keeps them around. But it sounds like if I would get into the soil nutrition a little bit more and have like you said, the McDonald's thing is a great example on food. Everybody goes to these fast food restaurants to get food, or most people, but really you're just getting enough to get you by. You're not giving the right nutrition to your body. I get that. I understand that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I think baiting should be illegal. I don't want to get into that. I could care less. I've always said I'm okay with, minerals and baiting if people would learn how to hunt and kill mature bucks and kill the right number of does, but they just don't know. So
in Ohio, with the baiting, it's nobody knows how to hunt anymore. It's where do I put the corn pile and hang my tree stand? That's all they're worried about. And I would love, and I wish, and that's the only hope I have with CWD is in Ohio. They say, well, CWD, we got deficit cases, no more putting out corn. You can run minerals. You can run, nutrition tablets and stuff throughout, or pellets or whatever, throughout the off season. But when it comes to hunting, no more putting out bait. So I would love that myself.
If you ever want to see how much water a topic holds, look at how it's treated across the board in different regions. For instance, COVID-19. I hate to keep bringing it up because people are already starting to forget about it. When it came up, you had certain schools closing down. You had some states had, more stringent rules. California, their clown governor Newsom, had some of the most strict rules and regulations, but then him and his family were out at restaurants eating and laughing and having a good time without masks, and obviously no jabs from the pharma, et cetera. So when you look at chronic wasting disease, like here in Pennsylvania now, where it's getting, or their map, they're showing it spreading closer to us into my county. I'm a big fan of Trophy Rock, and I give them, the clients here who come visit me, and obviously I encourage my clients to use them. You can't use them. You can't use minerals. And then you go to Ohio or other states, obviously Kansas, et cetera. And now these state agencies, with, by the way, the same biologists in uniforms going to the same Southeast Deer Study Group, reading the same peer-reviewed papers, are okay dumping corn out for the Bubba hunters who, think that's the way to hunt, right? So where's the continuity? Why are we treating it differently in Pennsylvania versus the bordering state of Ohio? That's what cracks me up about the whole. I want to get into CWD more on my podcast. I've just been kind of sitting back and studying it and looking at the whole thing. But
that doesn't make sense. That does not make any sense. Yeah, like you said, I don't have any. I think it's great that people put out minerals and stuff like that. But like Iowa, I think they have a little bit more sense to it. You can put out minerals throughout the spring, summer, but then the fall you got to cover them up. So so you're not using that as an advantage to kill your deer. I think that's great. Now Iowa's a little bit different. They have some other problems, I guess. With I don't know, bush hogging corn, doing whatever they do. So I get that, and that's a whole other aspect. But in Ohio, are we trying to produce trophy deer, or are we just trying to draw people in and make more money? And I think right now we're doing both. We're producing a lot of trophy deer, and we're drawing a lot of people in. But sooner or later, that line's going to end, and it's going to start going one way, and it isn't going to go the trophy way. It's going to go more hunter way. And then once you start getting less quality of deer, well, people from out of state are not going to travel there as much.
That's right.
Because why?
I think you're going to see a trend where it's guys like us playing the game we play is going to get more and more difficult. It has on our farm. I know since, like you said, your farm in Illinois, because big bucks are killed, and I'm sure guys know, eventually find you. They hunt hard and they kill, and it's certainly gone downhill and it's gotten more difficult. And now the state agency, yes, it is all about money. Hunter numbers are declining dramatically. I mean,
Yeah.
and we are their customers, right? Without licensed sales, they can't build their big pretty offices in the state capitol and spend their money on their pickup trucks and all that crap. And trust me, I got stories to go forever from friends who are in the. I was just talking to 2 or 3 friends from Wisconsin. There's a well-known deer biologist who has a web show, and he was talking about this buck he killed that had chronic wasting disease, and it was like the end of the whitetail. And then I call up my buddy in Wisconsin, and I'm like, hey, how's it going in the original endemic area, you know, where when it jumped?
Yes.
And then he's like, man, it's we still have too many deer. I'm like, shit, what I'm hearing is they've all died. And he laughed. He's like, you know better. I said, what are the recruitment rates in some of these counties? Started naming off these counties, and he's like, man, we are cranking out fawns left and right. Well, that's crazy. How are we doing that? Because the rest of the nation thinks that Wisconsin right now, including some of my knucklehead peers who are biologists and retired academicians, they swear that there's no deer left in Wisconsin. But the Wisconsin biologists are telling me, Jason, we've got great recruitment rates, great antler growth, and actually some of the best hunting we've had in years.
Wow, that's
so
good.
we'll take out some deer with CWD. That's fine. So anyway, I didn't mean to get on that soapbox, but I was just curious, I guess. I mean, you bring up a good point about the corn thing, and I truly believe that corn, first of all, the nutrient density in that corn is terrible. You're lucky to have 4 or 5% crude protein. Not that we feed corn for crude protein, but I've got growers growing open pollinated. Obviously, it's non-GMO. It's just our corn. Some of it's blue, some of it's red corn that our deer, the deer on these farms in these production zones are walking for miles through genetically modified, Roundup ready garbage corn to get to our corn. The protein content was over 13%, 13.3 on one. I can't remember the others. If the protein content is that high in corn, what do you think the other nutritive value is producing, right? So the corn that these guys are feeding, it's literally I don't know the meals at McDonald's anymore, but it's a number 2. It's a heart attack in a sack.
Sure.
And the deer are just as confused as the human beings, but as soon as you start putting the difference between a herbivore and a deer and a human being is deer are a hell of a lot more smart. They're way smarter than us. And once you give them options by nutrient density and food plots, and you remove the toxins and the synthetics, they get it, man. They have a flavor feedback mechanism, and they know it. They absolutely know it. And I firmly believe they will get off that corn, and they're doing it. I mean, I've got big 55,000 acre properties who are planting nutrient dense forages the way I want them to plant them because their supplemental feed program is killing them. And they're slowly seeing that supplemental feed the budget is getting a lot better as that cost declines year in and year out as we produce what deer really want. So
that makes a lot of sense.
I wish that group of guys who are out there consistently killing big bucks would try this, because I'd love to see. I know what you guys put into it. I know how painful it is to lose a target buck that let's look at Baby Giant. I mean, if you let him go for 2 more years, man, I want to put him on let's say he's got worms or he has a belly ache or he got into a fight that night. You think he's going to go eat corn that's grown with, first of all, it's genetically modified. When you genetically modify something, you're putting in a trait, but you're losing the good stuff as well. We don't know it, but they do. Sure. Second of all, they're modifying it so they can spray it with glyphosate. Anything sprayed with glyphosate is carcinogenic. It's terrible. They know it. We don't know it. We're too stupid. So I firmly believe that buck could be killed at 4.5, 5.5, 6.5 years of age, just because he got into a fight with the next up-and-coming Baby Giant. Maybe he pulled something, or he got a belly ache or whatever, and he feels the need to hit chicory or plantain or hairy vetch or something specific in that food plot that he can't get out of corn. All it takes, as you know, is one opportunity, and you can skewer him.
Yes. That's great points.
Yeah, so good stuff. Real quick, can you just cover, and we've been going almost an hour now, can you just cover, I know guys love this stuff. I think the best bow is the one you shoot the best, but I'm kind of going backwards. I'm redressing my recurves, just because I want to see the flight of the arrow again. I don't know if it's I'm getting older or the bows are getting faster or both. I can't see the arrow
Well,
fly anymore.
I'm kind of like you in that aspect. I actually killed my first deer with a recurve this past January. It was a doe, but it was one of the most fun hunts I've had in a long time.
Yep.
And it was just a doe because I was feeling like I was getting back to my roots,
There you go.
shooting a recurve. I limited my range to 18 yards, and just watching that arrow fly. And I videoed all of it. That way I can replay it in my mind. Don't have to just replay it in my mind. I can watch it. So
That's
it's very
awesome.
cool.
That's awesome. So hell, tell us about that, because that's what I'm trying to do. It's
Sure.
not easy going from, I'm 46 years old, and some of the old timers who taught me how to hunt, especially turkey hunt, like one of them gave me a 45-pound, I think it's a Shakespeare. He never had a lot of money. It's probably the cheapest bow you could find.
Yeah.
And he was like, listen, I obviously can't pull this back anymore. I killed one doe with it. Why don't you go, live on with it and see what you can kill? And I know nothing about it. So I'm just curious, did you shoot recurves before or longbows? And then at what poundage, what arrows? How did you dress that thing out?
So I'm definitely not. I don't know a lot about recurves and tuning arrows to your bow and all that kinds of stuff. What got me into that was, I mean, one of the guys I looked up to in the hunting world, a couple guys, was Miles Keller for one, and he killed several deer with a recurve. And then you had Roger Rothar from Ohio, and then you had Gene and Barry Wenzel, and so all that stuff was.
I had all their cassette, or what was it, VHR, VH?
Yeah,
what was it?
yes,
All the
VHS
old
tapes and stuff. Yes,
yeah, those guys are awesome.
Yep. So, and then Gene Wenzel killed this giant deer in Iowa, southern Iowa, on a farm that I'd actually hunted next to that. But he killed it way before I was ever out there. But it was a buck he called Woody. So it was a 220 to 30-inch buck. He shot it with a recurve. It's a great story and all this stuff. Well, in that picture, he has this bow, and he mentions in there that it was a custom curve from Bob Morrison. And Bob Morrison's from Ohio. So I was like, well, heck, I'm from Ohio. So I looked into it and got a hold of Bob Morrison, and I had him make me a bow just like Gene's.
Nice.
Except it was a custom recurve. I paid a lot of money for it. And I bought it and brought it back. I think I bought it probably in 2008, 10, something like that. And I shot it around, the yard a little bit. But I'm a kind of a trophy hunter, I guess you could say. So I want a longer range and I want more consistency. So I was always, just taking my compound, but I got playing with it, and I always wanted to just kill a deer with that recurve. So this year, I killed my buck in Ohio, and in the end of October, I killed my buck in Illinois at middle of November. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna practice with this thing. I practiced throughout the summer some. I'm gonna practice with it, and I'm gonna kill a doe. And I love hunting in the snow. So my plan was, I'm going to practice with this thing. And when I got some doe coming out to this food plot or whatever, when we get a snow, I'm going to jump in there and I'm going to sit right on top of them and shoot one. And it actually all came together. I practiced with it. I shoot 3 fingers under. Mm-hmm. I shoot instinctively, and I don't have a long range. I mean, 18 to 20 yards is what I feel comfortable with. And I had bought some, they're Wenzel Woodsman broadheads, yep. And it's a remake of Roger Rothar's Snuffer broadhead. So I bought them from Three Rivers Archery probably 20 years ago, and I just never have used them. So it's kind of crazy. So I didn't have wooden arrows. I had carbon arrows that were painted like wood, mm-hmm. and my bow is about 57 to 60 pounds at 29-inch draw, and it's a 60, I think, 1 or 2 inch recurve, and I can't remember how many grains my arrow was, but I know my broadhead was 100 grains, but I backed that up with another another 100 grains. There's a couple spacer things you can put on there to up your weight to have a heavier tip than back, and then I had just feather fletching, stuff like that, but it was a blast. I mean, I've killed all these big deer or whatever, and I killed this doe, and it was just like, man, this is just fun. and and it was just, I don't know. I was 8 foot off the ground. The deer come through. I shot it like 8 yards. It didn't have a clue I was there. It was just everything. The snow was falling, and it was a very exciting hunt. And I was able to get. What's crazy is I had a camera over my shoulder. I had the camera on a camera arm by me, and then I had a trail camera on video mode across like 25 yards off, facing back at me. It was great. I got all that on video. It was just so exciting. I recovered him. You're only ran 50, 60 yards. It was a doe, and I've killed several bucks over 160, and this was one of the funnest hunts that I've had.
Oh, I can
Crazy.
imagine. Yeah, for sure. That's good stuff. So you mentioned filming, self-filming.
Yes.
So Grant, my 17-year-old, killed his first buck this year. It's always been about football, so archer season was always screwed for him.
Yeah.
Football ended, and he killed a really nice 4-year-old, and he started to self-film. And I gave him my old, it was like a third arm or something, an old camera arm I used to use, and I was I'm like, now do this, whatever you do, don't do that, and blah, blah, blah. You know how it is. You can't really tell someone all the things you've screwed up and learned. Then I was like, all right, just here, go have fun. And he found out it's a challenge. And we just had a little like JVC, or Sony probably, just a little handheld deal. Nothing serious. I know I'm curious, what is, we might have talked about this a little bit before, but what camera arm are you running now? And are you using a cell phone, or are you running a video camera? And then obviously you mentioned multiple angles. Do you have multiple cameras?
Yes.
And just mention too about the self-filming thing. He was like, after he killed his buck, he was like, this is so freaking hard. I'm never doing this again. Screw the camera. I just want to kill deer. And I was like, man, you can't give it up. It just takes time.
So yes, I went that way. I first started out filming back in the early 2000s, where you had to have a cameraman. So to run the camera. So then I did that for a couple of years, and I got out of that. I just didn't like hunting with somebody with me all the time, and it cut into my hunting time because we shared being in front of the camera. So then it got to where I bought a small camera, and I had a muddy camera arm at one point in time.
Yeah.
And it worked great, but man, it was so bulky and hard to put up and all this kinds of stuff. So I slowly migrated away from that into I went to a fourth era camera arm. And then, I'm affiliated with Lone Wolf Custom Gear. So then Andre come out with the pocket arm, and it's just a tiny arm that goes in your backpack. It folds up. It's easy to install on a tree. You can put a float head on it. And that's what I went to. So I use a pocket arm, and I was just using a Canon VIXA 30 or HG30 or something like that. It was a small one, ran off of SD cards. Mm-hmm. And I used it, and it was great. It's just a little bulky and this and that. And then Painted Arrow come out with this little a magnetized thing that goes on top of a tripod head. So I put it on top of my fluid head, and then now I just use a cell phone. And so I have my personal cell phone, but I bought a cell phone that's not hooked. I bought it off the internet. It doesn't have cell service, but the actual phone and camera and stuff, the camera and stuff work on it. Mm-hmm. So I just use that. It has a magnet on the back of it. So I have a small, tiny pack that I put this camera arm in. I can slide my cell phone down in it, and I pop that thing out. It's one strap around a tree. I level the camera arm. It's very simple. Then I pull the cell phone out, and with the Painted Arrow magnet attachment, I just stick it right on there, and that's what I use for my main camera. And then I put above my head, I use a Tacticam a lot of times, so just a one that I get a little adapter where I screw it in the tree, and then I have another Tacticam on my bow, and then there's a remote. So I could do away with my cell phone camera and just use those two. And that remote, I hit the remote button when a deer comes in, and it automatically turns the cameras on, and it films over my head out, 180 degrees. And then on my bow, wherever I turn my bow, I've got the deer in view. So that's basically what I use it. I make it simple, and it has to be simple, easy, and fun, or you won't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a challenge when you're learning. He was learning how to bow hunt and learning how to self-film all at once. That's the holy grail right there.
Yes, absolutely. But it's so fun to go back and like your son filming that. What he can show you, He can show his, his buddies and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's just fun to. I don't film. I don't film my hunts for notoriety. I film my hunts to share with my kids, family, friends, that kind of deal. And if I get some notoriety out of it, usually it's great, but in the long run, it's probably not good, because with Onyx, everybody knows where everybody has property, and then they just jump up against you. So.
Exactly. I still wish I would have kept my mouth shut when I first started, but having a consulting company, a seed company, it was kind of hard.
Yes.
Our best bucks were those first 4 or 5 years, and then now it's hard with poachers, and we call them free grazers, just gaining permissions.
That's great.
Come out of nowhere. But that's so you have a separate cell phone that you don't have a phone number hooked or a plan on.
Nope.
You're just filming with that camera. Then you still have your other phone to do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, because I know some people that film with their cell phone, but they're usually jacking around, texting or doing whatever, and it's hard to get their phone onto the camera arm or whatever. But with this new magnet setup that Painted Arrow has, you could do that. They've got a magnet, little adapter thing that hooks onto your stabilizer that you could slap your phone right on and shoot with it. It's great. And then that camera arm or whatever, you could slap your phone. It's a magnet. So you just put it up there next to it and it attaches to it. It works great. It makes it to where it's convenient. You have a small pack. I mean, I don't want to be packing in 15 pounds of camera gear.
Exactly.
I mean, why go to the effort of getting the smallest, lightest tree stand and stuff I can get, and smallest, when I got to pack in a 5-pound camera arm, a 4-pound camera, and batteries and all this kind of stuff. It's just a pain in the butt. I want it to be simple and easy and quick to put up and take down.
Did you film your recurve kill on that doe?
Yes, I did.
Is that online, or did you just keep that offline?
So I put it on my Instagram page. I think you can watch it on my Instagram page, and then on my hunt that's coming out on Whitetail Dictions on YouTube. It's Lone Wolf Custom Gear YouTube channel for Whitetail Dictions. It'll be on my Ohio kill. So. Oh,
nice. Good deal. Everybody can tune in and watch that. Well, that's good stuff.
And you see everybody I've showed that to, they're like, man, you was excited. And I was like, I'm not faking it. I was excited as I could be.
Hell yeah. I would be jacked up. For years now, I've been threatening to do 2 things, and I don't know why I don't just start cutting my schedule and doing these 2 things, but I want to fly fish, and I want to get out there with a recurve or a longbow and do that. I could care less when I go hunting if I kill anything. To me, the fun and enjoyment is in the management year round when I'm not in the stand. But I could see where killing one, especially now, I mean, I think back to like my favorite compound bow was the Dart and Lightning. And it was my favorite because I was in high school and I shot that thing every single day. And it was super long. It was like carrying a sailboat and sitting in the stand with a sailboat, but it was still my favorite bow of all time. But I think I'd love to do a throwback hunt and kill a deer with that. But for me, I could see what you're saying. A recurve or a longbow is the ultimate because you're watching the flight of the arrow, and I feel like we've lost that.
Yes, I tell you, and I've talked to numerous other people that went back to traditional route, and they talk about how it's a different feeling just walking into the woods with a stick and string, and it truly is. Because usually when my bow is just a tool. Like my stand. I mean, it's a tool. I mean, I'm doing all this scouting, I'm hanging, and it's just a tool to get the kill done. When you go in with a recurve, it's like, man, how many people have walked into the woods like this and, are in our heritage and, the Indians and all this kinds of stuff. It's just, it takes, you're talking about taking yourself back to nature and doing all this, improvements to timber stand, food plots, nutrition, browse, all this stuff. Well, it's like bow hunting. You do all that stuff, but then on the bow hunting side, it's like going back to ground zero and doing it,
Yeah. Every time I mention it, guys are like, what's the matter? The compound's too easy. And I'm like, no. Don't misunderstand me. I can still miss with a compound. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
I just like the simplicity. And like when I was in college, I worked in a bow shop and then didn't hunt for a few years. My, first few years I was trying to build businesses, got back to compound hunting. And I was like, man, I can't even hardly work on this thing anymore. It's so different. And now I just feel like there's so many gadgets on them. I would almost rather just grab a recurve and shoot instinctively, but
Sure. Now, I'm not like some people ask me, oh, so you're going the recurve route now? I'm not doing that, but I'm definitely going to play around with it every year.
no, but
I would like to.
I bet we'd all love to see you kill one of your target bucks this year with a recurve.
Oh, I would love to do that, but the stars have to align when you kill a good deer. I mean, they truly do. And I'm sitting there thinking, if I go out there and then I miss, well, how will be disappointed? I know I'll be disappointed, or if it comes in out of range. But, I'm thinking at some point in time, when I get older and I retire and I don't have money to, let's say, travel around out of state and this and that, and let's say the way hunting's getting, it's the leases are going crazy and property values are going through the roof. Maybe I won't have much access to trophy class deer. And will I be happy just hunting, just let's say average deer or whatever? And I want to be able to, I think with a recurve or something like that, I will be.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, all right, man. I think we've covered almost everything on here. We'll save all the stand stuff for the next one as we get closer to fall.
Sounds good.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I think it was a great conversation, and I learned a lot. And you've got my mind spinning with this. With a lot of this stuff.
I want to work with you a little bit this year on some ideas I have, and just it's fun. Just play around with it, and if we fail, good. We know we don't have to talk about it anymore. But
sure,
there's always the chance that we could succeed and figure something out that some of these local guys around you are not in tune with, and gain a competitive advantage. I mean, I'm up most nights trying to think, okay, now what? There's only so much you can do in the whitetail world, but it just seems like we always find something new. So
yes,
but let's talk about that, and we'll reconvene this year after you kill your next big buck, and hopefully we played a small part of that.
Sounds good.
All right, buddy. Well, get on with your day. Appreciate the talk, and stay in touch.
It was a great conversation. Thank you.
You bet. All right, have a good one, Heath.
You too.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Many of us here on this podcast, including myself, are accused of enjoying the process of property management so much that maybe we don't hunt as hard or as often as we used to. I was curious. Someone like Heath Cisco, who has a killing system, has been on many, many podcasts and other platforms and is focused on one or two specific bucks each year. How much management does he practice to build the hunt and manipulate the hunt or enhance specific buck patterns? Private property owners have a huge opportunity to make it all come together and determine the outcome of one hunt during the entire 364 days leading up to that hunt. I'm specifically talking about food plots, prescribed fire, water sources, forest management, population management, etc. I know Heath and many other successful hunters are fans of the late season, and as a wildlife biologist and property manager, I know that the Achilles heel of a mature buck in the late season is food. He's rut stressed, he's winter stressed, and he needs to eat to survive and see another breeding season. I hope you enjoyed another episode.